Breaking news now. After a drone crashes near her home in Russia, the host of a TV show there issues a nuclear threat. A prominent supporter of the Kremlin and presenter on the state-run channel Russia Today, RT, recently expressed concern that the use of nuclear weapons is becoming increasingly uncontested. After a Ukrainian drone crashed near her childhood home over the weekend, RT editor-in-chief Margarita Simonyan made the claim on Sunday. As Russia struggles to subdue Ukraine in the war that began on February 24, 2022, her rhetoric follows a summer of saber-rattling invoking the specter of nuclear war. Supporters of Russian President Vladimir Putin have voiced approval for the use of nuclear weapons in the conflict, and one Putin ally argued on television in late August that Russia could not win the war without resorting to nuclear weapons. What prompted Vladimir Solovyov's on-air rant was the largest drone attack on Russian targets since the conflict began. Physicist Mikhail Kovalchuk, rumored to be in Putin's inner circle, advocated for nuclear weapons testing as a means of intimidating the West. It was Simonyan who brought up the possibility of a nuclear ultimatum, once again over the weekend. Google Translate translates Simonyan's Sunday post on the messaging app Telegram as follows. Tonight, an attack drone fell right in front of our family home in Adler, where I and my mother grew up, and where my relatives and their small children still live. The nuclear ultimatum is becoming more and more accepted as the goals move further and further away. Russia Today, the Russian Foreign Ministry, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry have all been contacted by Newsweek via email for comment. A Russian missile factory was the target of a massive drone attack on the same day that Simonyan made his post. The Smolensk aviation plant, where the Kh-59 cruise missiles are manufactured, was reportedly hit by 3 out of 4 drones on Sunday, severely damaging the facility and disrupting production. Smolensk is located about 400 kilometers, 250 miles, west of Moscow, close to the Russian border with the ally country of Belarus. Eastern European news network Nexta TV uploaded what it says is footage showing the moment the drones hit the building to the social media platform X, formerly Twitter. Officials in Russia claimed that they had intercepted and destroyed every drone, so the attack must not have succeeded, they said. There have been reports that Ukraine has discovered a new way to target Russia with drones, making the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, seem more common in recent weeks. A media outlet in Russia reported last month that the objects can be made to explode long after they have hit the ground. The final invasion was swift, and hundreds of Orthodox Christians were killed. To save thousands of lives, Armenia, led by a former human rights lawyer, had to give up the Nagorno-Karabakh enclave to the brutal forces of Ilham Aliyev, dictator of Azerbaijan. Russia was given the responsibility of maintaining peace by the naive United Nations Security Council, but when Armenia condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Putin retaliated by cutting off all protection for Nagorno-Karabakh and letting Azerbaijan's army run wild. The fate of 120,000 people hangs in the balance. They can either flee their ancestral homes or submit to a tyrannical regime that has incited resentment against them for decades. For centuries, Armenians have called the cloudy territory of Nagorno-Karabakh home. When it converted to Christianity in 301 AD, it was the first. Visitors from Yerevan, Armenia's capital, take the 6-hour road trek via Mount Ararat to Stepanakert, center of the Karabakh's democracy that was snuffed out this week, to see the hundreds of Orthodox churches and their ancient mysterious tombstones. From a contemporary airport, the flight takes only 20 minutes. However, for years now, no flights have taken place due to Azerbaijan's government's threats to shoot them down. Population data from the first census after Russia's conquest in the early 19th century show that the country was 100% Armenian and therefore should have been part of the Armenian SSR when Stalin redrawn the map in 1920. Instead, he gave it to Azerbaijan, and it took a civil war after the Soviet Union's fall for the error to be corrected. While the majority of Nagorno-Karabakh's population is still ethnic Armenian, they initially chose independence out of courage rather than to join with Armenia, the prudent choice. Azeri pogroms in Samgate and Baku sparked the conflict. However, a Karabakh defense force eventually prevailed. It was a brutal fight. There is racial animus on both sides. Stepanakert siege, during which Azeri forces bombed schools and hospitals and killed thousands, was a miniature version of Guernica. Azerbaijan cut off the only route bringing aid to the area, a humanitarian corridor leading to Armenia, earlier this year, so the population barely made it. In 1994, Nagorno-Karabakh declared victory and recognized its independence, following in the footsteps of Kosovo. It self-governed for the next quarter of a century with assistance from Armenia. As I discovered in 2014 while researching the country's situation for a court case, it did so reasonably well with fair elections and democratic institutions like an independent judiciary. The Armenian people, whose ancestors had lived in these highlands for centuries, fought for and won the right to resist a brutal dictator for a quarter of a century, despite what many news reporters said last week. The line of control at the border was the site of numerous Azerbaijani provocation attempts. Despite the absurdity of the situation, the Security Council had entrusted Russia with the protection of the enclave. Russia, however, did not take its responsibilities seriously, and war resumed in 2020. As a result of Armenia's vote condemning Russia at the UN for attacking Ukraine, Putin decided to cut off all support for it and exact revenge. This month's decision by Armenia to join the International Criminal Court (ICC) case against Putin for the abduction of Ukrainian children was the final straw. The Kremlin threatened to withdraw its security-mandated protection for Nagorno-Karabakh last week, which it described as a harsh protest, and which was delivered by carpeting the Armenian ambassador. Azerbaijan invaded after this. And what sort of response should be expected from the United Kingdom? This country, like Russia, should condemn Aliyev for committing the international crime of aggression. Russia, too, deserves criticism for abandoning the responsibility placed upon it by the UN Security Council. They are the innocent victims of a global double cross, so we should definitely offer to take some of the thousands of refugees. They should be very afraid of being persecuted if they remain in their current location. We have already begun arresting their political leaders.